And welcome to another edition. Again, a very trying times edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. Dr. Lopkin, first thing on I kind of knew it was happening anyway, but Bernie Sanders dropped out.
Bernie officially dropped out of the Democratic race, essentially making Joe Biden the Democratic candidate because there's no one left in the race. There's a couple of big things that this triggered. Number one was as soon as he dropped out, the stock market jumped 400 points. So
he was a threat to national security and the economy. And by the way, he's a charlatan. Never liked the guy. It all sounds good. And I'm not dying the wool, capitalist, whatever. But I don't think he believed his crap.
I don't know if he believed it or not, but the fact of the matter is, if you've gone shopping lately and tried to get groceries, if you've stood in line, this was basically a preview of what would happen if Sanders' policies had actually been enacted.
I agree, but I actually think for a guy that didn't work till he was 40, plugged in his electricity to his neighbor when he was 40, which, you'd think that's not exactly you're not on the achievement curve. He has no problem with losing. He's never been better. He's worth 5 million, 3 houses. Life has never been better, correct?
Yeah, he's in great shape. He's got a national profile now. If he decides to retire from the Senate, he can go on speaking tours and make millions more. So
I don't think he really regrets. I think he's absolutely fine with losing. I think the Bernieites are the losers, not him. He could care less. He couldn't wait to drop out. How does that sound?
Yeah. The big thing, though, is how it'll affect the Democratic Party. Because Bernie was obviously trying to pull them further to the left. So this actually does keep the party from going off the cliff to the left.
But Biden already made, because he's not the brightest bulb in the Christmas tree, already made his pronouncements. Green New Deal. Because he was too stupid and his advisors were too stupid to think anything different. He could have been very electable, especially in the climate of Corona. But he still may be electable, but he kind of made it harder for himself.
He made it harder for himself. However, we've seen this in every election. Whoever the candidate is, on the Republican side, they swing to the right. On the Democratic side, they swing to the left. And then once the primary is over for the general election, they have to move back to the center. Otherwise, they're not electable. So I don't think Biden's actually going to hold on to a lot of the more extreme leftist things that he was talking about earlier in the primaries.
How do you think he does? How do you think he does in the campaign against Trump? He's been hidden from view. There's obviously shortcomings in terms of his mental capacity. What happens?
Well, I think the fact that he's been hidden from view works in his favor. The less people hear him talk, the more likely they are to think he's a good candidate.
You can't do that in the general election, though.
You can't do that in the general. He's going to have to be out there. Do I think he can beat Trump? No, I don't.
You really don't? Whoa. Even with the coronavirus and going into a depressionary unemployment situation?
Well, again, I don't think by the time November comes around, the economy is going to be in that bad shape.
You really don't?
I really don't. Remember, we've already passed a $2 billion stimulus. Okay?
That adds to our debt, yes.
Yes, it's going to add to our debt, and we're going to add more to the debt. And you know what? The general public has shown that they don't care about the debt.
I got that, yes. Okay, but you really think the economy will be above board in November?
I do, because
Okay.
um take a look at what's going on. There are a lot of businesses right now, Amazon, CVS, Etna. There's smaller companies like local landscaping companies that I know for a fact they're all hiring right now. Then
Yeah, but
we've
those
got,
are low-level jobs, Lopkin. Hold on. 2 months ago, unless you were like disabled, um, you could probably get any job you wanted. I know a woman
oh,
that was laid off.
the economy's not going to be where it was when we started all of this. It's going to be lower than that, but it's going to be on the upswing. It's going to be better than it will be when we hit the peak, which people are guessing is going to be in about 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, let's transition, Dr. Lopkin. Coronavirus.
Well,
I'm intrigued.
before we go to Corona, there's
Okay,
one
go
other
ahead.
thing that Bernie pulling out changes for the Democrats. And Bernie was a holdout. There has been a lot of talk among the Democratic elite, the folks that actually run the national committee, about having a virtual convention. So, because they don't necessarily want to get everybody in one place, Bernie was actually the holdout on this. So, you may see a lot of what the DNC wants to do move onto virtual platforms and actually being done behind the scenes with less transparency than it's usually been done. And that's
Yeah, which
something
will
we need
steal
to,
actually momentum from Biden. Because
it'll,
I
st-
really thought about that, that anyone can deliver a speech, which actually might be his shining moment. That's not going to happen. Think
all
about
right.
that,
So
Lopkin.
this could be a big blow for Biden because
That's what I'm saying, yes.
it's a major opportunity lost for him to be out there. But again, my own concerns, having worked as a political consultant, is anytime you lose transparency, it's a bad thing.
Okay, let's transition. Oh, by the way, what do you have the odds in terms of Biden Trump?
Right now, I still give Trump 60-40.
I would be on board with that. I think when the light shines on the on Biden, it's he's got problems. All right, coronavirus. I'm a little very intrigued. I was a big alarmist with people I know. I heard 300,000 deaths. Now it's down to 60. Obviously, that's huge, but I don't
Yeah,
know. Yeah, your takeaway.
I mean, the media is making a big deal about an increase in people testing positive for COVID-19. However, this isn't really more people being, that have the virus. This is just more people are being tested
Of
so we
course.
actually know what's going on. I think more importantly is what Mayor Bill DiBlasio came out and said today for New York City. We all know New York City has been a major hotspot. He and Andrew Cuomo have been banging the gong that New York City needs 200 to 300 new respirators every day to keep up with the demand. And now he comes out and said, oh, we vastly overestimated this. We need less than 100 respirators.
Okay, let me be really stupid, but I'm going to have to do this. What if this is half of what they thought it was? What happens? And could that be a reality?
It's possible. The problem we have is that we're all trying to base what we're talking about on data. And the data coming into this is incredibly inaccurate. Sometimes it's inaccurate undercounting, sometimes it's inaccurate overcounting. We don't have a reliable data source, which is why the numbers keep shifting from day to day. If it really does turn out to be less than what they were predicting, that's huge because it means We'll be able to come out of this sooner. We'll be able to get the
Hmm.
economy running faster. And it's a bonus for every, and of course, obviously, it means fewer people dying, which is, the big thing. But you have to take a look at the fact that, they keep talking about the fact, oh, X number new diagnoses today, X number, more people hospitalized. But they haven't been what they haven't been reporting is that at this point, the rate is, I think, 75% of the people who have been admitted to a hospital have already recovered and been released.
Interesting. Okay, so how do you feel? It's only, they were still not even halfway through this. How do you think this plays out?
I think we're going to see the worst of it in the
2 weeks.
in the next 2 weeks or so, possibly three, depending on how quickly it spreads to the middle of America, which it spread along the coast. It's been spreading in Michigan, Illinois, those areas, California, obviously, Texas, Louisiana. But it's been a much slower spread in the center of the country because you don't have so many highly populated urban areas. It's going to depend on how fast it spreads there. If the spread there is slow and we flatten the curve before it actually gets too bad there, we're going to see the peak of this in the next 2 weeks, and then we're going to start slowing down and starting to recover. I think
Uh,
certain parts of the country are going to take a long time to get back to normal. New York City, California, possibly New Orleans is going to take a long time because they made very stupid decisions to keep Mardi Gras going
no,
on.
God.
You've
And
got,
by the way, do you know that even the Super Bowl could have been a dumb decision?
oh,
Do you know that?
yeah, it's possible. And now, of course, a lot of people are trying to make this political. Oh, the Trump administration knew in January and didn't do anything. Well, I mean, take first of all, if you want to really make it political, take a look what was going on in January. The Trump administration had their hands full with a baseless impeachment trial.
And I agree with that. I think, and we'll conclude with this: if it is what we think, and I think that's fair to say, if it's less, if it does end in the next, not end, if it does subside or even out in the next 3 weeks, Trump's the victor. Yes or no?
Yes, definitely. I think we're going to see the peak in the next 2 to 3 weeks. I think if we keep the social distancing going through May and start returning to normalcy at the beginning of June, you're going to see a very strong recovery by the time the elections come about in November.
Yeah, I would agree. Any final thoughts, my friend?
Even though we're saying the situation is getting better and that things are on the can be on the upswing, it's still important for everybody to practice social distancing and to stay home. That's how this thing is going to we're going to get past it and how it's going to get better. Don't assume that you can go back to normal now.
I would agree with that. And the other thing is, some of the people that thought that it's no better than the flu were dead wrong. If I had the flu, Mr. Dr. Lopkin, I could still do carnivore bites. I wouldn't even worry. I wouldn't even call you to, like I usually do when I have my little breakdowns. Wouldn't even care. This is completely different. Correct or not?
Oh, it's not completely different. Technically, COVID-19 is a flu.
I
It's just
understand it, but
it's just a
no. If you
very
have the
bad one.
flu, if you have the flu, unless this is true, if you have the flu, unless you are seriously compromised, believe me, if I had the flu, I'm not worried about dying. I'm just telling you the truth. Am I going to smoke cigars, which I don't do? Am I going to go to, happy hour? No. But I'm not worried. I'll sit home and ride it out for a week. If I get this, I'm worried. Final thoughts.
Well, I think in terms of if you get this, it can be bad. There's something that all Americans need to pay attention to, and it's the talk about how the vast majority of people that get this, very seriously, are those with underlying health conditions,
I know, but
and that
even if you're older,
no, but
and
that
even
that
Chris,
doesn't
even Chris Cuomo, who's 43, he said it was a hell of a ride, and he's not over with it.
Oh, it's definitely a hell of a ride, but you have
It
to
ain't the
remember
flu.
that underlying health conditions does not simply mean having respiratory difficulties, having a medical condition. It also includes having high blood pressure, being
I get all that.
overweight. If you're really worried about this, get into shape. This way you have less to worry about, not just from this, but from future flus.
That's a really good point, Dr. Lopkin. I truly believe it's not conspiracy theories. It's because the global population, I talked about this with a friend. When I was in 6th grade, it was 3.5 billion. Now it's, 7 billion. I think it's going to just be pretty much, not every year, hopefully, my God. It's going to happen more often, correct?
Actually, it shouldn't happen more often because the flu. Okay, quick definition: coronavirus includes the entire family of flu viruses. Because we've been hit with this, the more different types you have, if you're exposed to them, you get antibodies in your system. It actually builds up your immunity. So it has to be very different from what you've been exposed to in the past, which is what's going on with COVID-19, to really affect you. So the more flu viruses that we are exposed to that don't cause these pandemics, the harder it is for an actual pandemic to affect us like this.
Dr. Lopkin, any final thoughts? I thank you. As always, amazing insights.
Great being here. And remember,
And
you can
yes,
be part of the
say that.
conversation on Friday at 4:00. You can catch us at blogtalkradio.com/carnivore radio, and you can call in and be part of the conversation. We'll see you then.
Take care.
You've been listening to Carnivore Bites, part of the Exvadio podcast network. You can catch us every week on carnivoreradio.com, exvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcast Store, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you find podcasts.